Wade, people love asking, what's my break even age? Why do you think that's the wrong starting point?
Well, because Mary Beth talked about this idea. When people frame the break even age, that will say something along the lines of, well, I have to live to at least, say, 81 to break even and to benefit from delaying Social Security. They start to frame that as the gamble and worry, well, what if I don't live to 81? Then I'm not getting my money's worth out of Social Security. When the reality is their life expectancy might be 86 or 87. So the odds, there's much more than a 50% chance of making it to that break-even age. And at that point, it's all gravy. You're better and better off with each passing year. But I think just the whole concept of break-even ages, it tends to get people worrying that they're not going to live to the break-even age when the odds, again, the odds of living to the break-even age are much higher than 50%.
Good to get to the numbers. Andy, what's a real life factor that spreadsheets completely miss?
I just want to preface all this by saying all retirement planning is one big set of educated guesses. We're talking about break-evens and math and what have you, but tell me exactly when you're going to die. Tell me exactly what inflation is going to be. Tell me exactly what stock and bond returns are going to be every year for the next 30 years, and I will give you a rock solid plan that will be unwavering. We don't know that stuff, right? So we're making educated guesses. Factors that go into planning are obviously where Social Security longevity, potential assumed market returns, like Wade mentioned, though that's kind of a dangerous game to play, to think your investments will outperform what Social Security could do for you. Another sort of ancillary benefit that often gets overlooked is a tax planning opportunity. By delaying, you have that much less income coming in, filling up your tax brackets during the delay years, that you could potentially get ahead of taking money out of pre-tax accounts like IRAs, 401ks, et cetera, and do so in really low tax brackets before you eventually start Social Security. So there's sort of a secondary financial benefit of delaying Social Security with regards to longer term tax planning and tax efficiency.
Andy, can you just give us maybe a hypothetical illustration about something that people should think about? So like a hypothetical client whose optimal strategy wasn't what they expected.
I think going back to what Wade said again about assumed market returns and portfolio returns, if you look at a lot of financial planning software, oftentimes it will show you quantitatively, based on their assumptions and projections, that starting Social Security early is objectively the better answer. I mean, it's going to result in more money down the road and or even higher Monte Carlo score, lower chance of running out of assets. And for people who've done that on their own using retail consumer focused software, and they've seen the math, the apparent math that shows they should start early, having a discussion with an advisor who can layer in these other angles and considerations could be an eye-opening experience, especially again, in factoring in things like survivor benefits, which is a huge consideration that needs to be factored in the case of married couples.
Mary Beth, many retirees want to enjoy their go-go years. How do you balance living today with planning for age 90?
Well, I'm probably the only one on this panel that's actually retirement age, and I'm living in that semi-retirement. And we see all these studies that we've spent 30, 40, 50 years saving for retirement. That's built into our DNA at this point. One of the hardest things is giving yourself permission to spend in retirement. That's why things like guaranteed income, like Social Security, or in some cases an annuity, helps retirees take this nest egg, and change it into monthly guaranteed income. I think that's very important for people to be able to enjoy their retirement years, particularly the earlier years when they have time to travel, enjoy their family, because once a health event kicks in, it can change the entire outlook of the rest of your retirement.
Yeah, it's okay to spend. Wade, how has your research changed the way you personally think about claiming decisions?
Well, I tend to lean towards, as a starting point, having that high earner in the couple really consider delaying. Yeah, but to kind of also piggyback off of what Mary Beth was talking about, and just suppose you're retired at 62 and you're thinking to go ahead and delay towards age 70, and you may be worried, well, how do I spend money in the meantime? I've done research around this idea that you can actually build a Social Security delay bridge, whether that's an 8-year laddered portfolio of Treasury inflation protected securities each year. to provide that floor so that now you can have a floor of inflation-adjusted, reliable lifetime income that's 77% larger than otherwise. And then if you're worried about cuts in the future, maybe it's not quite 77% more ultimately, but you have a much stronger floor nonetheless of reliable lifetime inflation-adjusted income. That can give you more confidence and more capacity to really spend and enjoy those early retirement years from your discretionary investments on top of that. Because you know that even if those start running out, you've got more protected income that's going to keep you going for that full retirement. So that's really delaying Social Security and building a floor, a Social Security delay bridge can help you enjoy a higher standard of living in retirement. And I've done simulations showing that point.
Andy, your thoughts on building a delay bridge?
I think for a lot of people that's helpful. Definitely those that are more geared toward wanting and needing to see guaranteed known income at certain dates that's going to be there for them, be it a ladder of whatever sort. You know, it could be treasuries, could be CDs, could be multi-year guaranteed annuities, could be bullet ETFs, anything. The financially, objectively, will that always outperform just sort of like a total return approach to distributing assets and spending assets during the Social Security delay period? We don't know. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But the psychological, emotional peace of mind that provides, if that's what it takes to get someone, going back to what Mary Beth said, spend your money, live your life. That's what this is all about. Money is just a resource to facilitate people living their life. It's not the end all be all. It's not the goal in and of itself.
Mary Beth, since you are the one who's retired on this panel, your thoughts on, is maximizing Social Security always the same as maximizing retirement happiness?
Oh, definitely not. You know, money can buy you choices. It doesn't necessarily buy you happiness. But I think, again, it's the idea of having this paycheck in retirement. Social Security is the base of that paycheck for so many people. And then there are other forms of guaranteed income. And as a semi-retiree at this point, I can tell you I sleep well at night knowing I have multiple sources of guaranteed income, and I don't have to touch my retirement accounts until they're required. Here's one other point, though, that Andy was making, that if you're delaying Social Security, one of the advantages of drawing down your tax qualified retirement accounts like IRAs, 401ks before you have to is you may actually be reducing your future required minimum distributions. Because once you get locked into those RMDs, it's really dictating what you're spending in taxes in retirement, and it may be dictating what you're paying for Medicare in retirement. So to be able to draw down on those sources sooner may give you more flexibility in your later retired years.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next segment.